Like that, Jiho?
I like
Yeah.
that. I don't see us yet.
Yeah. We're not live yet.
Oh, we're live.
Oh, we are. Okay, there we
Yep.
go. This
Hey,
is
there
what
it
happens
is.
when we do stuff live, guys. All
It's
right,
okay. One day we'll get it all.
one day. But thank you everyone to who's live with us right now or who's watching us on the rewind for our fifth of our show of Blood, Sweat, and Wax. We are here with Turnit, Roll BJJ, and myself, Jiho. And obviously, we're going to be talking about some UFC cards that have happened, that are going to be happening, along with Panini Immaculate, just being delayed again, which I guess is pretty regular. But let's go ahead and talk about UFC 283 from last week before we start to dive into this week's card and next week's as well. So, what are your thoughts about last week's Brandon Moreno versus Davis and Figueiredo, that card that happened, including Teixeira retiring?
I'll go ahead and I'll start. I thought it was great. I liked I expected the outcome with Moreno and Figgy. I know it was probably sort of a controversial opinion for some people because I know there are a lot of fans of Davison Figueiredo, but yeah, I thought Moreno looked great. I thought he looked fantastic. Early on in the fight, he went to the ground with him. Didn't seem intimidated. I know Figgy has good jiu-jitsu. Thought it went well on his end, and I think he controlled the entire fight up until the doctor stoppage. As far as Glover and Jamal, that was a little bit more surprising for me, as you guys probably saw in the last episode. Paul and I both called an early stoppage for Glover. So yeah, that was a pretty surprising turn of events, in my opinion. Yeah, Jamal Hill is no joke. He's a force to be reckoned with, and I think we're going to see a lot of good things coming from Jamal. However long he holds the belt, I think he's going to do really well in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, definitely. Turnit, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great card. A lot of great fights. A lot of great fights. I think some of the ones that I just want to touch on real quick. So Dago Moises, great fight, nice
Yeah.
finish. I thought that was great to see. Johnny Walker's back, and he did the worm, which I'm like, ooh, tempting fate,
It
tempting
shows.
fate. But yeah, he's back. He's back in the conversation. I feel bad for Paul Craig. He looked really fit and sounded like he had a decent fight camp. So I feel bad for him, but I'm sure he's going to be back. He's going to come back. And then Jessica Andrade is a monster. I was so impressed by how she performed. It was unbelievable. And I felt horrible for Lauren Murphy. I know that you never want to call for a stoppage too soon, and the announcers kept calling for it and calling for it. But towards the end, like her husband's in her corner, right? I think,
Right.
and I don't know. I guess they know her better, right? So they're gonna call it if they feel like that's what she wanted. But Lauren Murphy's she's tough. She's tough. But yeah, I was very impressed with Andrade. Amazing performance. Burns, wow, absolutely dominated from the first moment. And I do think that really helps Hamzat from just in terms of perception and just what people think about him in general. But we saw that Gilbert Burns is now going to be fighting. Who was it again? I can't recall.
Jorge Masvidal.
That's right. That's
Masvidal,
right. So I mean,
right.
that'll be a topic for another day. But I'm just happy he's going to come back that fast because Gilbert looked great. And then Brandon, of course, I think this solidifies his legacy, at least for the time being. Some of those reversals, the scraps that they were in, that little trip that he did on Davison. I mean, that whole sequence when they were on the ground, and it was just awesome. It was just awesome. And Davison had him in some tough holds a few times, and I thought like, oof, this is going to be nerve-wracking from the get-go, and it was. But I was happy to see Brandon win. And it looks like, Jiho, you're going to get what you wanted, Pantoja. That I feel like that's the only fight to make now.
Oh yeah, baby.
Yeah, so that was cool to see that, and then him acknowledging that, and Pantoja was there, I think, and so that was kind of cool. Glover, okay, I was wrong. I'm gonna just take this moment to say that I was very wrong. However, Glover is still a golem. All right, like unbelievable. And
Yeah.
then when they were asking him, they were like, "Do you want to stop or whatever?" He's like, "No, let's go." And it was just so cool to see that. Amazing. And it was sad to see that his send off was in an empty stadium. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and people were saying, well, it's like 3 a.m. over there, so I guess that kind of makes sense. But you know, like if I'm out drinking and I'm at a UFC event and it's the first time it's been there for a while, right? I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay.
Yep.
So anyway, I was it was a shame. And then Jamal Hill, he did great. Obviously, he did great. Now I still think Yuri's gonna best him, but man, the drama. So that looks great to me on paper. And then on top of that, I just saw the other day that Magomed Ankalaev was calling him out, and Jamal was all about accepting that. So anyway, I'm excited for light heavyweight. This shakes things up. It's exciting. That was a little bit long-winded, but that's just my reaction.
No, not at all. I
Jiho, what do you
think
think?
I think there's a lot to cover from last week, but I'm going to try to keep it concise, right? Uh, Despite her OnlyFans account, I have a lot of respect for Jessica Andrade. I I think that Lauren Murphy is too tough for her own good. We still haven't seen her strengths really come out yet as a superstar, if you will. I don't think she's one in the making. Uh, Durino, what can we say about that guy? I mean, Roll and I, we believed in him when he was facing against Shemaev, and he delivered. Right? He may not have actually gotten the win, the W, but man, he made everybody realize that man, that guy is a force to be reckoned with. And thank God we have him versus Masvidal, and I see that as an easy win for Durino. But also, we're going to see Colby Covington versus Bilal Muhammad in the not too distant future. And then with Brandon Moreno, that guy happens to be a very smart individual. Where despite his like fascination with hobbies like Legos and Pokemon, and I'm not dissing that at all because we collect cards.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
was gonna say,
but I'm just saying, like, Moreno is able to read his opponents well. If you noticed the setup that he had for Kai Car France and how he went about that knockout, uh, he's he uses intelligence at that moment. It's ad hoc. And what he did against Davison was that he was reading his right hands. And every time he saw Figueredo just not winding up, but just a slight tilt in his shoulder, Moreno actually just charged it for a double leg or charged him with the body lock. And he knew how to take him down. If you notice, Cejudo wasn't even in Figueredo's corner, but I'm not going to get into that too much. Glover Teixeira, hats off to that guy, how awesome he was as an athlete. I think there are records that it's going to take a while for them to be broken. Jamal Hill taking on whoever it might be, Magomed, or I think he's going to try to give Yuri like until July to recover, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll see what happens with that. But Turner, I think you touched on a good point that with Brazil, like it probably was not the best audience. And what we saw there was actually because one of the factors was that the price ticket was pretty high for the casual fan to enter in. So we saw a lot of fans who were just in there for the names and not true fans. So I don't know, that might have very well been the case. But if you guys have any thoughts about that, I'm game. Just let me know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was on midnights or no evenings that night, and I missed the Andrade fight, so I didn't see Andrade versus Lucky Lauren.
Right.
And I also missed the Walker fight. Unfortunately, was which happened to be one of the ones that I was most excited for.
Yeah.
And so didn't see that one, but I know the outcome. Burns. I mean, what more is there to say? You covered everything as far as what we were talking about with Burns. He's an animal. He's an absolute animal. We believed
Absolutely.
in him for years, and even in the lightweight division, he had some success. And as a welterweight, he comes in a little bit smaller than some of the guys, but I mean, he makes it work. And he stylistically, I think he can hang with anybody. Um, as far as Glover's send off, like I said, or like you said, Paul, kind of heartbreaking, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you can't take anything away from Glover, as we spoke about last night on the Whatnot stream when I was co-hosting with Jiho. You know, you can have heart, but really at the end of the day, it's about the composure. and how you handle yourself and continue moving forward after facing adversity. And he speaks to that truly as a warrior and as an MMA fighter. I mean, he's incredible. So, yep, that's all I have on that.
Yeah, you can only go so far with heart, right? You need to make
Mhm.
sure that you have your composure set. We talked about it with Kanye Wu Collect. Shout out to that guy because he's also a fellow mat rat, high school wrestler at that. And his sort of high school wrestling motto stood for focus, composure, and heart. And really, you just can't go off a heart from the very get-go. But that said, let's go ahead and dive into Panini Immaculate, the next series that's going to be launching, which we thought was going to be today and then pushed back to the 8th and now into the 15th, at least for the hobby release. What are you guys' thoughts about that?
Well, I've yet to receive my FOTL case, so my thoughts may be biased, but it's unfortunate, but that's how it goes sometimes. You take the bad with the good. So at this point, I'll wait for my case to come. I'm really excited about it. I do have the checklist printed out here, and there's some sets in particular that I'm really excited about. Most notably, in my opinion, would be the inductions. I'm really excited to see who we can honor the people that were inducted into the Hall of Fame. There's the legend set, there's memorabilia, autographs, dual autos, as everybody knows, with Habib and Islam is going to be exciting.
Huge.
And some of the bigger rookies are in these sets. I know people were complaining about this checklist, but I mean, we have Fiziev, we have Jalen Turner, we have some of these bigger rookies that will be kind of a standout part of the product. Shavkat being a rookie in some of the base checklist, and then I think he has like a jumbo patch in the set. So it's not all doom and gloom, and it's not all. At the end of the day, it's not going to be as grim as some people are making it out to be. In my opinion, I think that once we see it opened, I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised at how the cards look and what this product has to offer.
Definitely. Turnit, what are your thoughts?
I am a little bit hesitant to make such a bold prediction, but I think this is going to be a tremendously successful product. And I just for fans, and I think the price will eventually reflect that. Obviously, towards the end of our stream, I can touch base on kind of where I think the market is right now, just in general. But I think depending on how they do with the sticker autos, to me it looks like there's a ton of on-card autos here, and there's a lot of them to be excited about. So we see the return of Marks of Greatness. Now, Marks of Greatness, I didn't have an opinion about when the first Immaculate came out, but when I got the first one, the first box we opened, it was Jan Blachowicz, and obviously he's one of our top PCs, right? And I saw that card and I was like, this is beautiful. I love it. And I'm not a big fan of patch autos. It's just not my thing for memorabilia autos. I like to keep those things separate for whatever reason. And I just thought that was a beautiful set. And I think we've talked about this before, but what I like about that set in particular is they're bringing it back. They're adding more names that we wanted to see. So I think people are going to get excited about it. But that set is unique in that in 2021, it didn't have everything's numbered, obviously, but it didn't have those other versions of the parallels that are more rare, like the 101, the 1 out of 5, out of 10, out of 25, whatever. So every card feels special, and I kind of like that. And the same was true of moments. The same was true of milestones, I believe. And I think that's great because it feels special every single time when you open those. And looking at the new product, we see Marks of Greatness is one of those examples. They're bringing back memorabilia autos and premium memorabilia autos. Those are on card as far as I remember. We'll see what these look like, in this case. But they have the all-time greats, which I think is going to be great. No pun intended there. Immaculate Legends, Immaculate Celebrations, Immaculate Inductions, Immaculate Moments, Milestones, right? Those are all presumably on-card autos. That's a lot. And then adding on to that, you get into like the memorabilia autos, the premium mem, rookie mem, remarkable. Shadowbox. If I had to speculate, I would imagine the Shadowbox autos are probably sticker. I'm interested to see what those look like. But long story short, I think there's going to be even more on card autos here. I think there's enough rookies in here to really make a difference. And we're going to get into 284, but there's a ton of Volk, there's a ton of Islam, there's a ton of Hamzat autos, there's a ton of Khabib autos. And to me, those factors alone make it exciting. And then you add all the rookies, and they're bringing back my favorite card out of 2021, which was the glove memorabilia. And there's a ton of those too. So a lot of the names that we didn't see have glove memorabilia from the first one, we're seeing them here. So I think that's really exciting. And maybe this will also get people to go back to 2021 and realize how special that was. But at the price point of what, like 400, 450 around that range, I can't see it going any lower than that. Like it's unbelievable to me.
It's bonkers
So, yeah.
right now.
Yeah, and look, we should celebrate that, right? Like I don't think Immaculate at that price point we're ever going to see it again. And maybe that's what they're doing and this is pure speculation. And we'll be at Mint Collective, so we'll be able to talk to Panini, and we're going to be able to talk to some of these other folks. But I suspect what they did is they saw what happened with 2021, and they're like, "Ooh, that's not how we want Immaculate to be received by any hobby group, right?" So they went the opposite direction. They're like, throw more mems, throw more signatures and autos, you know what I mean? And bring the price point down to a reasonable level. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, I'm more cautious than I think the two of you. I think you guys are both hyped, which deservedly so, because all three of us were talking on, or we're having conversation on Instagram with like, hey, when it was a Dutch auction for FOTL as the prices were dropping, we were all about like, oh no, is this the right price point? I don't know. Can we go further? Right?
Yes.
That's what she said. But you know what? I think that with something like Immaculate, it needs to be done right. And you're right. They did advance the needle to a lot of your points. Turnit, I totally agree with you there. Right? Marks of greatness. We have dual autographs back. It makes the most sense in this type of sport. More than any other sport, I mean, it's two opponents going against each other, right? But what I'm kind of hesitant on is the names that they have on, right? For example, like I'm grateful that we still have the rookie class consistent, even though there might be a few autos that I don't agree with here and there. I mean, I'm kind of unsure as to why we have, for example, a Lauren Murphy on there. A few other people that,
Aspen Ladd.
Aspen Ladd, exactly. Why do we still have Aspen Ladd on there?
Dude, we're straight to the trash.
And listen, we couldn't have predicted what was going to happen last week with Terrence McKinney losing to Bonfim, and the Bonfim brothers are going to kick ass in the UFC, by the way. I mean, but then the others, we totally believe in them, and I see it as though like the price point is going to definitely come up. I think people are starting to realize that maybe it isn't just rookies that we need to invest into. For example, Alex Caceres, right? He's been in the sport for a while, and then he made a slew. He made his statement, right, from his last win, and yeah, we'll hopefully get people rallied up for Immaculate the way that needs to be, because right now it's not that high for 2021. It's like $600 in retail value.
Yeah, what gets me jacked up about the price, I think the price point, the value is there, especially for FOTL, in my opinion, because Dutch auction getting down to 443 was a massive undersell, in my opinion, because of the fact that there's an extra card. I mean, there's an extra card guaranteed out of 6. So
are those on card also, Roll? I think they are.
They may be. I'm not sure, but I would assume
there's a memorabilia
low numbered
autos or something.
I would assume being that low numbered, I'm sure they probably would be on card autos. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, you're getting an extra card, and at the price point, if you bought in at the bottom of the Dutch auction, which I was fortunate enough to do so, at $443, I mean, I don't see it going lower than that, even for hobby. I see maybe hobby hitting a low of 400 or a low of possibly 350. But I mean, you can't really miss. If you get those boxes and you're looking to rip for yourself, you're gonna be looking at 6 cards guaranteed. One of them is guaranteed out of 6.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's not forget like Prism Hobby from 2022 was at an all-time high at 1100.
Yeah,
Right.
insane. Yeah. And Gio, like to your point, I agree that there's a lot of names in there that I don't agree with. That I
Yeah.
would not have put them in. Now, maybe they signed those cards like a year ago and they're like, we got to put them in. Like we got to put them in.
Right.
That's probably the case, right? It's like
Right.
we make the list, like, production takes forever and all that. But I crunched the numbers, but I don't have the math proof here in front of me. But there's enough cards in there of names that you can be pretty happy with if you get to the
Mhm.
point where I think the calculation that I had was somewhere in the range of like 10% of the cards are going to be names that you're pretty happy with that have some good value. So like 10% of the cards could be like, Charles. You could get a Khabib, you could get Islam, you can get Hamza, you can get Volk, you can get
Right.
Izzy. So I still think there's enough. And the reason that's important to me is because that tells me that the product will, at least on a case by case basis, and maybe even a box by box basis, there's a
Mhm.
reasonably good chance that you're going to get at least one card where you're like, ooh, I like that. And that
Right.
makes the rip more fun because it's like you don't get completely smashed over the course of the whole thing, which is kind of what we saw of 2021. Some of those boxes were just, it was painful.
Right. It looks like we lost let's see, roll.
Yeah, I
Um
think we lost roll.
and now people can't see us right now. We're just behind of this massive octagon, but we'll get roll back soon. But yes, I agree with you there. There's been a number of names that I didn't agree with, and yes, production had to weigh in as a factor there. There we go. Roll is
Sorry,
back.
guys. I'm not sure. Potato Wi-Fi over here in good
It's
old
okay.
Midwest.
Mine's not. It's been unbelievably cold, by the way.
It has been. The weather
I
has been
think that's what's
What?
crazy
doing
right
it.
now.
It's
Yeah, it's
so
about five
bad.
degrees here, so just had to disconnect and reconnect my Wi-Fi. But what I was saying is, I think they're more of a filler for the product. It helps to create scarcity for some of the bigger rookies and some of the bigger cards, and that's my opinion. I think these other fighters, they have to put somebody in the product, or else it would just be all Islams and in
Yeah,
Umars and
yeah.
in Shavkat. So there has to be lower end fighters in those sets. Some of the names are questionable, with Aspen Ladd and Lauren
I feel
Murphy and
bad. I
whoever
take
else.
back
But
what I said. That was mean. I'm sorry.
No, it's not
no, it's
mean.
completely understandable
But I'm
because
gonna put it
nobody.
straight in the trash.
Right, and as collectors, there aren't a lot of people that probably collect certain fighters. I won't name any fighters in particular, but we're looking for these bigger chases and these bigger hits. So then that's the whole reason we buy these cards, because we want
Right.
bigger cards. So
Well, you,
totally understand where you're coming from, Jiho, but yeah, I think it's more of a filler for the product.
but yeah, you know what we're missing out on is Pantoja. How do we have Alex Perez? We have these other
That's fair.
flyweight standouts, but we don't have the people that actually do matter.
That's a disgrace, in my opinion.
Yes, that's a good point. Like they could. I mean, maybe their thinking is we don't want to debut somebody in Immaculate. We're gonna wait till Prison. But like
Mm,
this is all speculation, right? And we can hammer the Panini rep when we go to
wait,
Mint, Geo.
yeah,
What are you guys thinking?
exactly. Why
I
do we
mean,
still have Carla Esparza out there, right?
Oh, well, she was just champ, right? That's
I mean, yeah, she was
on
the champ.
paper. On paper, I
Yeah,
ask Little Turnit about Carla Esparza. He didn't open much debut Prism, but he opened one and he saw an octagon and he was so happy and it was the Cookie Monster.
at the end of the day, it is a 2022 product. So when we get to 2023 and we have these newer rookies coming in, I think they are waiting for Prism. I would agree with your speculation.
I
yeah.
think they'll fill it out with those names that we all think, how the hell are they not in there?
Right.
And then they're gonna have hopefully names like Alex Pereira, right? They're gonna have uh I forget his name.
Pantoja.
They'll have Pantoja, but they'll have like some other folks too, like Rojas, right, Junior.
Yeah,
Um,
Rosas, yeah.
yeah, they'll
Mm-hmm.
have like stuff like that, and that's a lot to get excited about.
Yeah, it
Totally.
definitely seems like a Prism will be here to stay as a standard.
Yeah, it's just with UFC, it's kind of funky because the products get released sort of on their own schedules that don't necessarily align with the UFC because the UFC is always going on, right?
Yes.
So it's like there's people whose rookie card will be like 2 years after their debut fight or something like that, right?
Gilbert Burns, for example, in 2021. I mean, he was in the
Yeah, or
UFC.
Moreno too. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and,
I mean,
and that's just the nature of it, right? It's like, okay,
and that's the problem I think with PNE. One of the issues, right, they have with UFC, it's an afterthought. The rookie class that we talked about, that we could all agree on, is just subjective, right? They aren't
yes,
true rookies. They didn't just make it to the UFC that given year, like with other sports, with NBA, NFL, and
yeah.
whatever else. But
No, and actually, that's a great point. The rookie designation for UFC has more to do with when the card, like, is this their first card of this company, than
yes,
it does, is this the first time they're in the sport? Whereas every other sport, it's all about the sport itself, right? And
right.
maybe that's like the deal with the devil, right? That we've all made. And I'm okay with it as long as they're consistent about it. Like, don't wait 5 years for a rookie card.
Oh man, we missed out on so many good like athletes too. Like the one that I keep on harping about is Michael Johnson. I'm surprised that guy doesn't have a card
Yeah.
in any set. That guy needs to get some credit. But
Yeah.
anyways, I don't mean to keep on beleaguering the point about Immaculate. So let's go and talk about this week's fight card: Derek Lewis versus Spivak as the headliner. What are you guys' thoughts about this week's fight card?
I'm really hoping to see a Derek Lewis W. I don't think it's going to happen personally. I think Sergey Spivak's got a lot of big wins. Anything can happen, but I think I'd like to see Derek Lewis pull one out.
I
And
would like to see that too.
coming off of 2 losses, I think he needs to scrape one by. But it's all in his hands. He's got very heavy hands. He's been working on getting into better shape, having better gas tank. Um, so that'll be an interesting one. I mean, we got Dawoon Jung versus Devin Clark. I think that's going to be another exciting fight. Dawoon Jung was one of the biggest rookies to begin last year. A 2022 class. He was one of the bigger light heavyweight rookies, along with Alonzo Menafield and a lot of those other guys. So I'm excited to see him fight again, and I'm hoping he can pull out a win against Devin Clark. Marcin Tybura, we
Yes,
all saw
thank
what he
you.
did. What's
Woo!
that?
Marching, man.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a really exciting one. Also, I mean, to look at him, who's come off a few losses in the past, and beat a guy like Alexander Romanov with an undefeated record, super promising prospect, probably one of the biggest heavyweight prospects aside from Tom Aspinall. And that's I think he's going to make a name for himself in the heavyweight division. I mean, he's been established, he's been around, but he's knocking dudes out now. So we need to pay more attention to him, not taking anything away from Blagoy Ivanov. But I think that Marcin's going to pull this out. As far as the other card, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. The only other familiar name I know is on the prelims at Tatsuro Taira. I think he's going to. I've been looking into him just a little bit. I know All Time Cards has mentioned him, but I guess he's a pretty promising, young prospect. So
He is. Yeah.
yep.
Turnit, what are your thoughts?
So I am pretty excited for the Marcin Tybura fight, and I didn't think we'd get so much Tybura action going today, and I'm appreciative of that. So I like all Polish fighters. I'm Polish, and I've been watching this guy go up the ranks for a while now, and he had a long streak of wins, and
He
then
did.
I was really pumped for him, and he lost to Volkov, which I found that fight to be really disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, he had a nice he had a win after that against Harris, excuse me. But I was like, okay, all right, there's still hope. There's still hope. But I am very, very bullish on Romanov. I think he's going to be a top 5 heavyweight for a long time. A long time. He
Ooh,
doesn't take almost any damage. He looks
okay.
better and more fit than ever. And I'm a big collector of his. I love the guy. I think he just has a great personality too. And I actually, watching that Tabora fight, I thought the first round was a 10-8. So I actually thought Romanov probably could have walked away with the win. But when you go to the scorecards, anything can
Mm-hmm.
happen. So I was really disappointed in Tabora in that round 1, but then I thought he held it together and he showed what he can do in the next 2 rounds. So I I think he's going to take the W. I think he's going to take the W. I'm happy to see him on the uptick. To get 10-8'd in the round, the way that Romanov destroyed him, like he didn't even land a single punch, right? To bounce back from that and be able to scrape away with a decision win, to me shows some resilience. And I'm just going to throw this out here. Oh, can we see it?
No.
Maybe.
What is that? Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, hold on. The AI is fighting me. Okay. It's a gold shimmer 10 of Tavora,
Ooh,
baby.
that's a nice
$25
card.
purchase, baby.
Wow.
But I did the grading myself, but that's how little faith. You have little faith out there. But I think Tabora's gonna show some heart.
To
And
have
then
25, you
yeah,
said $25.
yeah,
Wow. Yeah, plus grading. So you're at 45 into that card. That's insane.
yeah. But it's found its forever home, you know. But aside from that, Dawn Jung, I want to see him come back. I'm excited for him. And then I think Derek Lewis. My heart says Derek Lewis. My brain says Spivak.
Spivak, right?
And with the way that Derek's been, the fights that he's had the last year and a half, I would have thought that if he loses by KO in the next one, he might retire. But seeing him kind of get fit, and probably the most fit we've ever seen him, right? That tells me that he still has some runway. He wants to keep fighting. Because otherwise, like he just goes into it. Let's see what happens. If I lose, I retire. So I think he may lose to Spivak, but I think he's still going to be around for a few more fights.
Right.
What about you,
Oh,
Jiho?
man. This is tough. All right. Number one, I'm glad that we have Korean fighters back on the roster, right? We have
That's cool.
a load of them, right? Just as you are proud of your Polish heritage, I am with mine, especially since I trained back in Korea with uh, I didn't train with any one of these actually, but then they come from the same sort of camp that I did. But like you guys, I want to believe in Derek Lewis. My heart wants Derek Lewis, but he's been on he's been on a losing streak. I don't know if he could get himself out of it. I know he's taking his physical regimen to the next level, but is it enough? I mean, DC actually called him out, telling him that hey, if he doesn't win this, he's out. I don't think he's worthy of being in the top 10. Right? That's what DC said. I see Spivak winning because I see Lewis much more as that puncher, right? When you talk about boxing, there are people that are actual boxers versus brawlers. And I fit like Derek Lewis into that brawler category, right? We all know him for that vicious knockout that he put on display whenever he wins. I'm the very last 10 seconds against who is Alexander Volkov. Amazing, especially with a guy that tall. I do want to see Taun Jung, excuse me, back in the win column against Devin Clark. By no means that easy because Devin Clark is always game. Taun Jung, I like the ferocity that he brings to the table, right? He just, for the lack of a better word, bum rushes people, right? So, whereas opposed to Taibura, I feel like he is much more a tactician right there. He knows how to actually devise a good strategy and follow it through. That's one thing I wish that Korean fighters can actually do better on is to stop brawling and start to think about things much more strategically. Choi Duho, in Korean we pronounce it as Che Duho. He's supposed to be coming back. We always know that he puts on exciting fights. Everyone can recall that I think fight of the year that he had against Cub Swanson, right? It's hard to forget about that sort of performance that he had. When it comes to the preliminary card, don't know too much about these fighters to be truthful with you guys, except for Ji-Young Kim. I know that she's been on the wrong end of a lot of decisions, including one with Molly McCann. And that actually won her like fight of the night. So hopefully we'll see her, especially as that she's been with Syndicate MMA for a while now, to see her back in the win column for that because I believe she's only 9-6 right now.
Nice, good point, Gio. Yeah, and one thing I did some digging. I think this card was initially going to be a lot of the fighters here in these fights were made for the Korean zombie fight that they were planning, and then that fell through. And then one thing I wanted to add, so I have a few friends who are Indian and they do jujitsu and all that. And
Mhm.
we were recently talking about how we'd like to see more Indian fighters, and I believe
Yeah,
there's one in the prelims.
yeah. There is.
Nice.
Is that
Anshul
Uncle
Jubilee.
Jubilee? Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm just interested to see how he does. I'm rooting for him.
yeah. I think when it comes to any type of fighting sport, when you have somebody that is a minority, uh, I think that you want to make sure that that person, he or she, is a top prospect, right? You don't try to throw in somebody who's going to be like a record that's going to be wins and losses being equivalent to each other.
That makes sense.
Right.
Just to break
Yeah,
through,
it's
kind of.
it's
Right.
sort of Olympic-esque in that aspect. Like now you're starting to bring that nationalism aspect into it. And I think that started a lot with the Brazilians because we saw how much pride they had in their country and
Mhm.
they were coming over and, we see that with the Brazilian audiences. Every time there's a fight in Brazil, I mean, we see the level of nationalism. And I think that's starting to become a thing more in the UFC is they want to showcase what's available in their countries and what kind of skill in the martial arts that they have and make a good example of their country. So
Yeah, I agree
I
with
love it.
that all the way. I mean, we're still lacking presence from, I would say, Southeast Asia, South Asia, if you will. We have plenty of Eastern Europeans, but we don't have enough Western Europeans for that matter, except
That's
for ones
fair.
that
Yeah.
represent Germany. We just came up across like with Ilya, who now represents Spain, and maybe Joel Alvarez, right? We don't have enough fighters from North Africa. We have plenty from Central and South Africa.
mm-hmm.
So we definitely need to see more representation, but this isn't some sort of thing where just because you represent one country, you punch a ticket into the UFC. You got to make sure that
Oh
you
yeah.
climb the echelon.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
let's see what's the next fight we have coming up. We have the Islam and Volk card we can speak on if you guys
Oh yeah. No,
would like to move
absolutely.
on
We
to the
have to
next
touch
topic
on
here.
that. We
What
have
a
to touch on
card.
that one. It's amazing.
I'm gonna take a drink right now just to make sure like that's a ride in itself.
Oh yeah.
I don't want
Yeah,
to.
I'm really
I'll take
looking
a
forward
swig
to it.
too. I'll take a swig too, but I don't want to give free advertising away. Hold on.
But yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski headlining it, following up with Yair Rodriguez versus Josh Emmett. But I mean, there's so many good fights in this card alone. I mean, if you look at
Yes.
the preliminary cards, fights, and also the early prelims, amazing stuff.
Where do we
Dude,
start?
Where do
Jack
we even
Della
begin?
Medellina.
Yeah.
That's another one. It's like this card, you go down the list and it just keeps getting better and better.
Oh, Jamie Malarkey. I'm excited for it also.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Jamie's good.
I like him a lot.
Who's Francisco Prado? Do you guys know who he is?
No, no, I'm not
Hmm.
sure. Let me just check him out real quick. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
not sure. I'm gonna just based on that, I'm gonna go with Jamie Malarkey. But Prado's 11-0, but I don't know his history, so I can't really
No,
speak to it.
but we do see Loma Lukumi, right?
Yeah, I'm
Which
Yeah.
excited for that one
actually
too.
is not a stage. I don't want to say it's a stage name, but it's a pseudonym for her real name, if you will, because the Thai people until recently never had a last name. If you think about it, you have a lot of people who are fighters. For example, Stamp Fairtex, who represents Fairtex Gym
Mm-hmm.
or one championship, using her last name from the very gym that she
Hmm.
works out of. So I'm not saying Lupumi is a is a gym that she actually is from because she is with Team Alpha Male, but it's something that they adopted.
Yeah, that's
Interesting. I didn't
interesting.
know that.
So if we want to start from the top, I mean,
Let's start with
Islam
that one.
versus Alex. I think this is going to be absolutely insane. It's been a while since we've seen somebody come up from another division to challenge the title holder
Yes.
from featherweight to lightweight, especially. This is going to be an absolute banger, in my opinion. Volk has every tool in the book. We've seen him get better over the years. He just keeps continuing to get better, beating guys like Max Holloway multiple times.
Right.
Um, putting it on TKZ the way he did, and
Oh,
among all of his other wins, it's just going to be absolutely insane. Islam, has a ton of tools as well, even in the stand-up department. I think he's got just continued to get better. Uh, but I think obviously it's his wrestling that's going to set him apart and his
Right.
sambo. And in this fight in particular, what interests me is Alex's low center of gravity,
Yeah.
and if Islam's going to be able to handle, you know, him being able to sprawl out and be a little bit lower to the ground than some of the other guys. For example, Charles Oliveira. He's a tall, linky fella.
Mhm.
He's
Yeah.
you know, he was able to get to his legs a little bit easier. I think what's going to happen is Alex. He may have trouble with Alex on or Alexander Volkanovski just because of that. So I'm interested to see that, but I want to hear you guys' take before we go on to the other
Sure.
fights, actually, because I'm
Yeah.
interested to hear
Oh
what you
yeah,
guys
no,
have to
this
say.
this is the big one because there's a lot of implications for the UFC. There's a lot of implications for the card market, and beyond any of that, it's just interesting to me because of how dominant both of them are and
Mhm.
have been. So, I mean, we've seen people go up to challenge the title holder with Izzy versus Jan. And a lot of people, if you guys know the chorus on that one, right? It was, well, Jan had pounds on him, right? And that was like people's way of explaining how that happened, right? But there was more to it than that, in my opinion. But with Alex versus Islam, you guys know I'm a big Alex fan.
Yeah, you
Uh,
are.
love Alex, and I've always seen him as becoming the GOAT in that weight class. Now, him going up, I don't see him having any problems with this just because of his rugby background, and he used to weigh more and everything. So I don't think that matters as much as people think, the weight difference. I think he's going to be perfectly fine. Now, the only thing that is interesting to me, or not really interesting, but that kind of worries me a little bit, is people rightfully make the comparison of Alex. Like, how was Alex like doing on the ground against Ortega?
Hmm.
And that was an amazing fight, and that made me an even bigger fan of Alex's. But I think it's an easy argument to make that when you get put in a choke by Islam, that's going to be a worlds apart from what Ortega is capable of doing, probably.
I
Um,
can I talk
yeah,
right here, if you don't mind?
yeah,
I think you made a strong point. So the choke, right? Up until Charles Oliveira, uh, he encountered Islam, right? I mean, Roll, you and I both practice jujitsu. I mean, we practice it like a religion, if you will. But for any black belt, especially like a world class black belt, to be frantically tapping like that, right? That
hmm,
signifies that pressure, that choke must have been out of this world,
yep,
right? Because there's no other way for a black belt to be tapping out as if you were like gasping for breath, his very last breath. And I feel as though that's what Islam brings to the table. I'm not saying Brian Ortega's guillotine wasn't world class at all. I mean, that's what he's known for.
yeah,
That and
yeah,
the triangle, like T City, that's what he's known for. But Islam brings a different dimension when it comes to that smothering pressure from the top, right? Which
yep,
all Dagestani fighters are known to do.
yeah. And I think that is the I'm not going to say elephant, it's the horse in the room, because Islam loves keeping horses and stuff. Apparently, he went on races against Magomed Ankalaev, and
Did he?
Ankalaev won. Yeah, they were, of course, because of course they were. I think it's all he has like a stable of horses and stuff. He like fight anyway, but so I think that part is what worries me the most. And the only other counter argument that I'm actually kind of fond of is the center of gravity of Volk, the fact that maybe he'll sprawl out a little bit. He's got that, like his legs are so strong, right? And he if he like I think by the first maybe minute or two of the fight, we're
Mhm.
going to kind of know how it's going to go. And if Volk can stop Islam from taking him down one or two times, I think then we have a signal that okay, this is going to be a long fight, and that's great for fans, right? Um, But if Islam takes him down, I just don't know. Like you said, like if he's able to get Charles to tap, so and Charles most submissions, right? If he can do
Right.
that to Charles, like I mean, it's just different. Now the other thing is, okay, let's say Alex sprawls out. He has amazing takedown defense. I haven't seen Alex like amazing boxer. All right, striking is excellent.
By
Just
far.
like watching the fights against Max, watching the Korean Zombie fight,
Oh,
amazing, amazing. Just
yeah.
I can't say it enough. However, are you going to outpoint Islam with striking if you don't get taken down? Is that the plan? Because I don't see, like, I don't know if Alex has enough power to knock out Islam. That's the other question I have.
Has Alexander ever knocked out anybody? Has he stopped anybody recently? He hasn't.
He hasn't.
Right.
But I mean, again, he went against some crazy guys, right? Like,
Right.
but you're right, and that's the thing. So then if we're drawing a decision tree on this, right? It's
Mhm.
okay. We know what Islam's going to try to do. We know what Alex is going to try to do to defend against that. Then what happens? Like,
But
what's the
here,
road to victory?
but here's the thing, and Will, stop me if I'm wrong too, because you grapple just as much as I do, and Turnit, you bring up solid points. Islam's wrestling is different from Habib's or other wrestlers, if you will. The reason why is that he knows how to use foot trips. We haven't seen a lot of wrestlers in UFC, aside from John Jones, actually knowing how to use the foot trip. They try to sweep the person instead of actually using a foot as a fulcrum, if you will, right? That sets them apart. Right? I'm not talking about like when people think about wrestling, they think about people shooting in for the double leg, they think about body locks and etc. Wrestling, there's a lot to it, right?
Mhm.
As people will try to like dumb it down to not checkers, but um, so do I see Islam taking down Volkanovski despite his sprawling ability? Yes, because he doesn't need to have to worry about the sprawl necessarily. He has that to his advantage because when you trip somebody with your foot, that the sprawl is useless,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Right.
fair.
I
And
think. Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Roll.
I think his advantage over somebody like Habib that comes in and grinds somebody out with
Yeah.
his trips, it's more of the misdirection.
Yes.
You're,
Exactly.
yeah, you're making a threat toward one way or toward one direct. You know, you're putting somebody into one direction, almost like a judo. It's a sambo judo style
Right.
trip where you're using their own weight against them to fool them and make themselves mess up instead of actually
Yeah.
going in
Yes.
and grinding it out. I think that's where the advantage is going to be 100%. And with that lower center of gravity, um, there's more mass locked into one area where he can fall a lot easier. With shorter legs, especially, it's harder to keep your balance. So yeah, he might have trouble. I would say he's going to have a lot of trouble with that if he doesn't come in with a game plan and that specific game plan of blocking or of looking for that and
I
solving
mean,
that puzzle immediately.
yes. I mean,
Yeah.
tactically, I'm thinking about how he's going to keep Alexander down, right?
Mhm.
Alexander knows he's going to get taken down regardless, right? His
Yep.
stand up is just adequate. It just only complements his grappling. And so what I see here, it's a question of underhooks, right? If I want to get a tactical, but when a person were to take like someone else down, how you control them is by keeping their shoulders to the mat and by applying underhooks or your arms under the person's like under theirs. You are able to do that. So I'm sure that Alex is like working his ass off like at
Yeah.
camp, making sure that doesn't happen. Also, like making sure his elbow to knee connection is there, so it doesn't.
Mhm.
So he could actually start scrambling out of because he will be the shorter fighter despite having actually a longer reach.
Yeah.
I think the
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the one thing I do want to add is although my my heart says Alex, of course, and I like Islam too. I think he's good for the
Right.
sport. I think he's good for the sport. Like all of these fighters, the last 5 to 7, 8 years have up leveled everybody, right? Like it's just
Mhm.
like you've got if you think about like other games or sports or whatever, the meta, right? The meta is constantly changing and you in mixed martial arts, and you love to see that, right? And now we saw like the Dagestanis, right? And the grappling is taking, all that stuff is becoming big, and people are like, oh, there's this wave coming. So I like what Islam represents, and I'm happy to see people challenging it. And I don't
Right.
want to count Alex out because I think his fight IQ is tremendous.
Right.
I have no doubt that he's planning for everything that we've just talked about. Now, when you're fighting against someone who's, you know, top in the world in his weight class right now, how much is that going to be? You know, how much is that going to matter? What kind of impact is that going to have? We don't know.
Yes.
But from an implication perspective, if I could just shift gears just a little bit, Alex has everything to gain from this fight, nothing to lose, in my opinion. It's if he loses, nothing happens to his reputation, in my opinion. I don't think he loses any fans. If anything, just doing this is just, you know, a lot of people are going to respect him just for doing that,
Yes.
challenging himself, and that's what you want to see in champions. Is like challenge yourself. And somebody that was saying that, and I thought his interview, I forgot who it was with. It might have been with Ariel. I can't remember. Jamal Hill. So his interview before his fight with Glover was something like, "Oh, are you excited?" He just wanted to test himself,
Right.
and that's all he cares about. It's not so much I mean, obviously the win's important to him, but it was all about testing himself. So seeing Alex go up, if he wins, I go, right?
Right. I agree with you there. I mean, think about this. Let's draw the parallel. I like the point that you just made about his stock only increasing. Think about how Izzy fought against Jan, right?
Yes.
And so like Jan didn't gain that much,
No.
and yet Izzy did
Yes.
because he said, you know what, I'm ready to fight. He didn't win, but at least he took on that risk.
Yes.
And I didn't
Yeah.
mean to bring up Jan to
No. This is great though. That's it. And you know what's interesting about that
Mhm.
is if we can acknowledge these 2 points, which are it did not hurt Izzy to lose to Jan, and it
Yeah.
would not hurt Alex to lose to Islam. And if both of those things are true, I have a lot of hope for the casual fan and the collectors, because guess what? Izzy was undefeated in the UFC going into that, right?
Right, he was.
And Alex is also in the UFC, right? And what that tells me is, okay, we can stomach some losses for people we love. And that's a start, right? If we can start there, all right, now let's get into other nuances, right? But that's a good sign. That's a good sign. That means fans are becoming more intelligent. And speaking as a layman, right? I mean, I think it's good. It's a good sign.
Yeah. I think with Volk, it's the mind of a fighter. He's a hunter. He wants to gather those wins. I think he's very dead set on becoming the greatest of all time. He doesn't want to be a fighter in the UFC. He wants to be the best fighter in the UFC, pound for pound. And I think he's always striving for more, whether that means testing himself against Islam or anybody else in the division. And he's always game. And I love that about him. And kind of shifting back to where we were talking more technically on some of the keys to success for Volk, I wrote a few things down. I think he's going to have success if he gets taken down. Jiho, as you were talking with our underhooks, is in the butterfly guard
Right,
and,
butterfly
and
guard
getting those
forehead.
hooks in immediately.
Yep.
I also think with Islam being longer, he can make him. Alex can make himself a little more compact and get
Yeah.
underneath him and shift that weight. To make Islam a little bit lighter and to stretch him out. And with his limbs stretched out, you have power by being compact and keeping yourself tight.
Mhm.
And I think even if Islam is on top, if he stays in that butterfly guard and gets those hooks and is able to reverse the position and get back up to his feet, I think that says enough for Volk in the first. If he's able to get back up to his feet, I
Mhm.
think that's a huge key to victory. And also keeping the head under the neck of Islam in that butterfly position is huge.
Yes, but that's gonna be massive in the butterfly guard.
Yeah,
Right.
your body can't go where your head can't go. So, I mean, if he's underneath his neck, he's not going to be able to move positions and transition to a bit more favorable position. So, if Volk can cancel out some of Islam's biggest tools, I think that's his biggest key to victory. And I would be shocked if he wasn't working on that constantly in the gym, because Volk
Yeah.
always comes in with a game plan and he executes beautifully most of the time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this is going to be a really, really interesting fight. As you said, I think Islam does have a lot to lose here if he does lose the fight. Volkanovski's going to put himself out there regardless, and he's just going to keep going up. And he loses this fight, he's got more title defenses as a featherweight.
I think okay. So you guys know that I like to tie ideas together because I like to hear about conspiracy theories, no matter how wacky they are. What have you noticed that the UFC has been marketing this fight?
I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah. What?
I don't
Because
know.
I base it off of what you guys just said. Volkanovski has a lot to gain. However, Islam doesn't, right? Islam versus Oliveira was massive. They had that going on for months.
You think
And
they're
then
hedging?
I think they're hedging their bets right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I think they really effed up with Power Slap. I mean, that it just sucks so bad.
Oh, power. The racist CTE, that's what that is.
I refuse to watch anything about it, but I think half of it is them hedging, and the other half is them just trying desperately to make it work for some reason.
Especially after what Uncle Dana did.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
can't. That's like
unfortunate.
we're living in a decade, the last 10 years, where the Onion is out of business.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
That's a hilarious point.
Like, can you imagine you wake up and you're like, really? Like, come on.
I think it takes the sport back. The UFC even being associated with slap fighting, I think takes this a step
Yes,
in the wrong direction, because we tried for so long to
absolutely.
make it seem like it wasn't human cockfighting, and at this point, it seems more
It's
of a
ruining
brute,
it. Yeah.
aggressive sport, and it does contribute to more CTE. I mean, it's in the science. If you
Yeah,
look at people getting hit in the head as boxers, you at least have the ability to duck, move, slip.
yes.
In slap boxing, you're taking
Yeah.
a dead hit to the face
Oh,
with an
at
open palm.
full
Yeah. I
potential.
mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
with
There's, I
full
mean,
momentum and in force, and it's so dangerous. And I think the UFC messed up by even associating themselves with it.
Oh, by far.
like 6 months ago, if you asked me what I think about Dana in for the UFC, I would have said I'm not going to make any like judgments on him or his personality because I just don't care.
Mhm.
But as a businessman and as the head, or like the figurative head of the UFC,
Right.
I think he's done great. He's done
Yeah,
great
he
for the
has.
sport, and he did that,
Absolutely.
in my opinion, by the matchmaking. He knows how to generate controversy, the little conspiracy theories that we talk about sometimes. Like, they are very finely attuned to that. And one example of that is this like Pride drink sponsorship that just came out,
Oh
right?
yeah. Content
And
market, he knows.
yeah, and a lot of people online, who have been fans for a while, I presume, because they've been, their accounts have been around forever. They're like, "Oh, this is a disgrace." They're like, "This is, no athlete would drink this." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, were they drinking Monster before this?"
Right,
Like, who
exactly.
cares? And the reality is that signing a brand that's associated with the Pauls and is going to bring in young viewers is exactly what every sport needs to be doing. Like, you can't just care about existing fans. You have to always be bringing in youth.
No,
So, yeah.
Paul, thank you for sorry, turn it.
Hey, no worries. And can I make one last point, Jiho? So the
Sure,
reason I
please.
say this is because he, with the last few months, Dana may have the UFC may have outgrown Dana. I'm not sure, but
Yes.
anyway, go
Okay.
ahead.
No, no, no. I like that fucking point, by the way. The reason why I say that is look, the NFL is finding ways in which they're actually trying to lessen the severity or the frequency of CTEs, right? Dana's like, you know what? Screw it. Slap league all the way. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah,
Like, why are you doing that? Like,
I
why
thought, yeah,
contributing to a movement that shouldn't be there? And I do believe that UFC has grown uh, faster than Dana has actually anticipated and not been trying to adapt to the times, right?
like, you signed with ESPN. Like, you're okay. You've joined the big boys. Like, let's not do this. This
It's not a
silly
frat
stuff.
boy club anymore, you know.
It's
Uh,
not. It's not. And uh, I I think like somebody else said this. I can't remember. It might have been Little Turnit, but Dana was really fascinated with how big the slap thing was overseas. I think in Eastern
oh my
Europe or
God.
something. But I mean, come on, just come on.
Look,
Like,
he's making the right strides, investing to ADCC, being the full sponsor for the next massive grappling event of the world. But moves like PFL, it takes away from what he's been doing right, with Dana White's Contender Series, so
Yeah.
Ultimate Fighter, including distribution, how he's worked it up to ESPN. It's amazing what he's like done for this company, along with the brothers.
Yeah.
So
It's still fragile though. To
yes.
to your point, like you guys are saying, because you have been fans of the UFC longer than I have. And I think it's interesting how we've gone on this tangent, but I think it's important. But I think it's really important because
Mhm.
I do think you're right in that, like, we got on this tangent because we were talking about them hedging and all this kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So they're in a fragile state right now, and I think it couldn't have been worse of a time, because if we look
Oh.
back at, I think it was the fight card in New York, okay?
Mhm.
So they had the New York event, and that was one of the events that was for free to the public, right?
Right.
And that one was you had the Schnell Sumoderji fight,
Oh,
and
Oh, man.
you saw what the
amazing
public
fight.
thought. Amazing fight, amazing
Right.
fight. However, if you looked at, and Twitter is not humanity, thank God, but if you looked at people's like reactions during that fight, they're like, "Is this a sport?" Like, "Oh my God," because it was like profuse bleeding. Okay,
Yeah,
but
right.
that tells you how sensitive the broader market is to this.
Yeah.
And like, we're not, you can't get rid of, people are going to get cut. It's going to happen, but that should have signaled to them, okay, like, there's a reason that people are reacting this way, and they might not be our fans necessarily, but anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but I
Okay.
think you guys get
Yeah.
the point.
No. You're doing a great job, I think. I was gonna go off and talk about Luke Rockhold versus Paulo Costa, right? And then talk about the Roman circus, but I'm not gonna talk
Oh,
about
I love that. I thought that was awesome. I thought it was just so badass. And I just, I'm assuming no one has like hepatitis or anything, and you could just like bleed into other people's face.
Hey, a shout out to Blanc 730. Yes, Power Slap is a fun thing to watch if it's a short, but you can't make a sport out of it.
Yeah.
And the tenure is going to be so damn short unless you're like Cabbage Court. What's the name? Cabbage from the early days of UFC, right? It could take so many hits until his chin gave out. But yes, I agree with that all the way. Let's go on and talk about Yair Rodriguez versus Josh Emmett and other fights, including Della Magdalena, right?
Madalena, yep.
Who also needs a card.
He needs a card by himself, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Shout out to Basis Dude, by the way, who went and got his Panini instance. Good move.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basis
Great
Dude,
fighter.
as kick-ass guy on whatnot. Everyone should give that guy a follow.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really excited for to see Josh Emmett fight, as I always am. I love watching Josh Emmett, and Yair, same thing. Good fighter. Really know if there's a lot to say about Yair, but Josh Emmett, I mean, he's just one of those dogs. He gets in there and he's the same way. He'll fight anybody. I love watching him fight.
Right.
He'll stand and bang, and he'll go to the ground, and he's just fun to watch. And like I said, with Jack Della Maddalena, I'm extremely excited to watch him fight. Every time he steps in there, he makes it a boxing match, and it is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it'll be good. Even Parker Porter, I'm looking at the card right now, and Justin, what is it? Justin Tafa versus Parker Porter. Parker Porter, he's a big boy, so we're gonna see some heavy shots in that fight for sure.
Heavyweights on the main card. Yeah.
And those are the true heavyweights. Those aren't the 6'5" boys. Those are the 5'10", 300 type guys. So that'll be fun to watch.
Excuse me.
No, we can't forget about Jimmy Crute and Alonzo.
I was just about to talk about that. So Jimmy Crute, he's loved over there. He's at home. At least there's gonna be like a local audience, right? And he had a tough one against Jamal, right? And this is a tough comeback fight. Right? Like,
very.
This is a tough one. I don't know. I feel like Jimmy's in for an L. I don't know.
Yeah. I think they're setting him up for failure in this one because if you see what Alonzo did to Misha Serkinov, who is not a slouch. I mean, Misha has done some really, really good things in the sport, and Alonso made him look like a child. I mean, it
Like,
was
Yes.
he's coming back from injury, and this is the fight he gets.
right,
It's like, who did he piss off?
right.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Only talking smack about the slap league.
And it's like that's even like objectively independent of Jimmy Crute or who he is. Like anybody coming back from a severe injury, I mean, does this ever happen where they put him up against somebody who's on this kind of a streak? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean Alonzo Manifield, shout out to that guy because he's also an LA native, just like I am. That guy has so much dynamite in his hands,
Yep.
right? Last time he was stopped was by another monster by OSP by being knocked out himself. And I feel as though Alonzo Manifield just has that momentum going for him right now, especially if a fighter is coming off of an injury. It's not the best to have that in your conscience to think that this guy that you're going to be facing is going to be known as a knockout artist, right?
Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna take this moment to just talk about how Alonso's been in the UFC for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and his rookie card is 2022. I have it right in front of me. I have one. So just to reiterate a point we had earlier.
Yeah.
Right. But what about Jack versus Randy Brown? Should I even ask who you guys have?
No. No, I mean, I think Della Maddalena is. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think he's title material. I
Yes.
think I think he's got what it takes to hang with anybody in that division. I mean, just from his last 3 fights,
Mm-hmm.
they've been absolutely insane.
They're all round one finishes.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
That guy is a stand-up. And that's what we need from Australia right now, right? We used is he Australian or is he a Kiwi? I forget. But yes, we definitely need that right now.
yeah, he's from Perth.
He's from Perth, okay, from
Yep,
Australia. That guy is amazing at what he's done. He's 26. He can
yeah,
only get better from here. His chin hasn't been
100%.
exposed. Come on.
Yep,
Randy Brown, I feel as though is a step up in terms of his opponents. He's going to be towering over him at 6'2". But Jack has more tools in his kit.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't been following Jack as long. He's kind
Mm-hmm.
of flown under my radar, to be honest with you. But I'm excited for it. I mean, I've heard a lot of great things. I've been rewatching some of his fights. And then maybe shifting gears because I think we're pretty unanimous on that one, if that's okay
Right.
with y'all. Going back to the Josh Emmett versus Yair, to
Yes, thank
me,
you.
that fight is a coin flip. I don't know how it's going to go. I'm excited for it because I like watching both of these gentlemen. However, and maybe this is controversial, maybe it's not. I don't see whoever wins here has no chance against Volk
The bigger issue, right? I like
because
that.
that's the ultimate. Like this is a gift that Alex is giving them. Basically,
Mhm.
this is a gift that he gave to the division. He said,
Right?
"I'm gonna do this, by the way, and you guys better fucking appreciate it."
Yeah, I hope you guys appreciate what they're
Yeah,
doing.
get your little kid's table belt.
That's kind of hilarious. We know that Emmett's 37, right? He's older than Yair. Yair has been on a streak. I mean, I guess only 2 wins, but then compared to Emmett, who's been on what, 5? But do I see them actually performing at that championship level? Not necessarily, right? I feel like Yair, I'm a big fan of him. I actually have him winning the fight, but I mean, against like the Korean Zombie, he was losing up until that last like flash elbow that happened out of nowhere. And all the more power and respect to that guy. He has that game mentality. He will not give up, just like Derek Lewis, just like with Durinho. Those guys will not give up. Just like I'm totally laughing on that guy's name, but I'll get to it back to him later. But I feel as though Yair is going to be taking this fight.
Nice.
fair assessment.
Yeah. Do we are there any other fights you guys want to talk about from 284, or maybe we should just any other topics that we should bring up? I have a few that I wanted to talk about, but they're not specifically related to 284.
Oh, no, I mean, go ahead. I think that the floor is yours. I mean, all the other fights got kind of canceled, like Robert Whitaker and Paulo
I
Costa.
was really sad to see that one. Yeah, that would have been cool.
It
Although, I
would have
mean,
been
is there
great.
anybody that was going to take, who wasn't going to take Rob?
I think Robert Whitaker stands only to win from any kind of bout right now because
Yeah,
we know that Alex Pereira, he's not known for his ground game. I mean, look at
he didn't
how
look
he
that
was
good.
exposed,
Yeah, at least on
right?
the ground. Okay, so here's something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
There's two things. So the first one is presumably, and there's a lot of this is speculation, rumors,
Hmm.
right? But we've got this Bilal Muhammad versus Colby fight
Hmm.
now that's being talked about, and I don't know how much of that is Bilal kind of trying to push that. I'm sure he's trying to market it because obviously it would make some money, right? And then we've got Usman versus Leon. Is Hamzat ever going back to welterweight, or is that done?
Nah, that's done, man. I don't
Yeah.
know about you, but
I'm sad to see that though. Ugh.
can he actually cut down that much weight again?
So I think he could because we saw him fight in two weight classes in like a week, right? On Fight Island or whatever.
Hmm.
But is it healthy for him, and does his coach want him to be doing it? Uh,
I don't think it's sustainable over the
yeah,
longevity of his career. I don't think it's sustainable for him. I think it's much safer, much more beneficial for him to go up to middleweight at that point because if he's walking around, I would guess that he's walking around 200,
yeah.
and to cut down to 170 is dangerous. I mean, it's not good for your internal organs, and I think that he's going to start to see issues medically, and
Yeah,
over the length of his career, he's not getting younger. I mean, he's a young guy, and he's going to continue to get to the point where it's harder and harder to cut weight because we see that happen with fighters. Trying to think of somebody now, but yeah, we've seen it happen in the past. I mean,
right,
fighters
right.
will have to move up a weight class because they've reached their 30s, and it like as everybody here knows, it's a lot harder to cut weight as you age. So
I know
I
all
see
about that.
him. Yeah, I see him going up the middle and hopefully staying at middle. If he wants to come down and do a fight at welter, cool. But I think that he's probably going to fit better in the middleweight class, and I think that he probably has a better opportunity to become champ in the middleweight division.
I I I think that sounds right to me, Roll. And I'm wondering, so this is again pure speculation here, and you guys tell me what you think about this. My theory is that Hamza always intended to take the belt, which I think he'd be more than capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, just going to middle and staying there, and then maybe even going to light heavyweight at some point potentially. But but I don't know if the UFC would ever. The UFC hates vacated belts, right? Um, so I don't know if maybe there's something going on where like this is conspiratorial, right? Where it's just like they're pushing against it. I don't know, but just my 2 cents is like maybe that it's kind of like a bargain they've struck.
Right.
Right.
Because Colby Hamzat would be an insane fight, in my
It
opinion.
would be. I mean,
Yeah.
especially since he trains now at Tiger Muay Thai.
Like, why
Right.
wouldn't they make that?
And the
Uh,
size difference there is just
it's too
it's
much.
insane. Yeah. I mean, Colby walks around as he's a lighter lightweight or light welterweight as it is, and it was kind of the same with Burns, it being like a lighter welterweight and
Mhm.
going up and fighting somebody who's like an extremely heavy welterweight, and we saw how Burns' technique and experience did against Hamzat, and I think um, Colby would struggle with the strength aspect of it, but I think his technique would carry him. And I think that he may stand a chance against Hamzat, but I think the ball is in Hamzat's court at that point because he is a heavier man and he's stronger and probably better on the ground with his
Mhm.
wrestling, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right. Right. I mean, man, Hamza is such a funny character, right? He comes off as like the bad boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
The evil
we all,
Khabib.
yeah, the antithesis of what Khabib actually stood for, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
I feel as though that with Hamza, it kind of puts it at a predicament because we know that Hamza's striking is not that great, right? And there's a guy by the name of Bo Nickel
Yeah,
who's always going to tear him up, who actually knows how to wrestle, I think, better than Hamza does
I would agree.
in terms of MMA, not in terms of just pure wrestling. Um, and Tejera, I mean, that guy, he kind of like he threw a wrench to the system for the middleweight division.
Everything's kind of jacked up, in my opinion,
Right.
across everywhere because of injuries, because of the Kamaru Usman knockout.
Mm-hmm.
Is he losing to Alec? I mean, it's just Jamal Hill. Like, what happened in the last 6 months?
It's insane. I mean, even with Francis vacating, it's like it's such a weird, bizarre thing that's been going on with Kamaru, Izzy, Francis, all of them in the last 6 months or so losing their belts.
It is weird. It is weird. Shakeups are fun though.
The three kings of Africa.
Yeah,
sad. They were down. But
I have one other thing I wanted to bring up, which was I don't want to spend too much time on this necessarily because I don't have a lot of data to show or talk through. I'm just throwing this out there. It's a very emotional sort of reaction to what I'm seeing, and I'm totally I'm open to being challenged here. But months ago, so heading into kind of the fourth quarter of 2022, with collectibles, so sports cards, trading cards, whatever, towards December, it's always a bad time for the market because that's just seasonal. We always see it. Now, what I've kind of noticed is the market has continued, in my opinion. What I'm seeing now is over the last year and a half, when people were starting to panic with the macro economy sort of going down a little bit, the stock market was crashing, crypto was crashing, all that kind of stuff. We saw a lot of people panic in the sports card hobby and just start liquidating collections, right? And what you saw was a lot of auctions, tons and tons of auctions. More things were going up on auction than probably the market was willing to bear. And what happened was some things, were priced in a decent place. Some things kind of, you got a lot of steals.
Right.
Then what happens is people notice that they start seeing that, okay, I'm not going to put these things on auction. It's way too risky, right? There's not enough liquidity. There's not enough people checking these things. So prices kind of went down. Supply went down. So nobody was listing their nicer cards and stuff. What I'm seeing now is people are not turning to auctions. They're doing fixed price, which always, in my opinion, is the right move if you're trying to sell a big card. To me, because it's like you can kind of get offers and you don't feel like you have to time it and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, to each their own, right? But what I'm seeing now is the supply is increasing. So I'm seeing a lot more nice cards on eBay, for example, but they're priced at fixed prices that are historically a lot lower than they have ever been. And I think what we're seeing is that maybe the market hasn't bottomed out yet. There's still people are not willing, like the collectors are not willing to let go of their prized pieces, which is a normal state of affairs in this kind of environment. But what we're seeing is a lot more people are willing to take anything for some of these nicer cards. So I mean, I'm not saying it's like in free fall or anything like that. It's just we haven't quite rebounded yet. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
I totally agree with that. I've seen cards that were unattainable for my and many others price range maybe a year ago that I've been able to get my hands on, which is fantastic for a true collector that wants their PCs.
Yep.
But at the same time, like you said, I think there may be more room in some cases for the market to fluctuate, maybe in the downward direction. But I think that ultimately, as people start to see the new products come out with these new rookies and people get excited again, I think we will see a bit of an uptick, especially toward the middle of the year toward April, May, around that time. I think that people will start to get excited about this stuff, especially with with Prism. I think Prism's going to reinvigorate people's interest.
I can see that
In collectibles or in this hobby.
I think it's bottomed out for the most part. It's just that this is not to sound like a broken record because there's enough podcasts and YouTube streamers and everything that talk about this, but it's a great time to be a collector. It's
Yeah.
just the supply wasn't necessarily there like 3-4 months ago, so it was hard to find what you wanted. The supply is there now, and maybe that's just the natural next step in this process. But it's just something I wanted to talk about because people, I mean, everyone's thinking about it, right? Just in general, like where's the market going with different things, and I thought it'd be good to just touch on it for a moment. But Jiho, what do you think?
No, I appreciate your guys' perspectives. I think that with the market as it stands, I think that it truly is like we've all talked about, a buyer's market, right? And this market, UFC notably, and MMA overall, especially now that PFL now has its own cards, if you will, from Upper Deck. I think that this is much more the area where it's like a make or break for UFC, right? Is it worthwhile continuing on this journey for those people that are trying to look at it as a sport where you can actually flip the cards, like we see within NBA, within NFL? Because right now, to be frank with you, a lot of people just buy cards based off of personalities, not necessarily win-loss records. And even if they do, they try to apply MMA math, which we all three know doesn't work, right? Just because you win against one fighter doesn't mean they can beat another. And so what I see is hopefully people are actually starting to enjoy the hobby for what it is, which is a great sort of entry point for people to get into collecting, right? And start collecting fighters that actually do appeal to them because of the way that they grew up per se, or based on their sort of style and what they believe in, right? Their ethos, if you will. So, I mean, as you guys know, I sell and whatnot, and it's good to see people that say, "Hey, do you actually have a Rob Font card despite his loss against Chito Vera?" People are asking for Alex Caceres, like, "Ooh, I like Bruce Leroy. I like the way that the flair that he has. That's fantastic." People are starting to pick up on like Jack Adela. I keep on messing up his last name.
That's okay.
Picking up on Jack, and even though they don't have his cards, people are like, "Hey, when's his actual card going to come out?" And Panini Instant obviously has them. So it's pretty cool to see actually fans now like taking their time before like just jumping onto speculation space, because on this popular trend that people are buying off of Shavkat, for example.
No, I am with you. It's more so obviously the big boom years or year, that's going to bring a lot of eyeballs, a lot of attention, but is it the right attention? And organic growth, be it in marketing, and just, your wheelhouse, be it in marketing, be it in other areas, organic growth is always going to trump everything else.
Yes.
Because it's sustainable and it builds on itself, and word of mouth happens and people enjoy it. And like, at least we can be damn sure that nobody at this point has any kind of delusions about what like a fast flip can make them in the card market, which is actually good. So they're buying things that they like, which is always the recommendation for everyone, because you have to be willing to sit on these. These things are not as liquid as other markets.
They're not liquid.
Yeah, and you have to be happy with it. And for a large part, I'm very happy with the cards I have in my PC, and they're forever homes, right, for them. So I think it's good for the hobby. It might take some time to get back. And then UFC is growing. I think even though we've gone through this downturn at a more macro level in the card market and in alternative investments and stuff, if you even want to call them that,
right?
The number of people that are in this hobby still that remain today is much bigger than it ever was. And the amount of investments that we're seeing from Fanatics, from Panini, even though those are different sports, whatnot, Fanatics Live just got announced. They're investing in that. eBay is investing in live platform selling too. Grading companies exploding and investing in a lot of these things. I mean, there's going to be mergers and acquisitions that are probably going to happen naturally as competition kind of, heats up. But it still, to me, seems like this market and this segment are growing. And I'll leave you guys with one question, unless we have some other topics we want to bring up. But I feel like I've in my life, and it's not just because of this hobby, I've met more people that do BJJ than I've ever met before. Is it growing as fast as I feel it is?
Yeah, we oh wow, where to begin with that? Because roll, I feel like we've actually joined a cult and we drink the punch on the daily and we pay for punishment in return. Actually, before we talk about that, just to address like how this market is evolving, the UFC collecting community, there has to be some sort of, I guess, homage, respect, whatever you will, to the old fans. Like Roll,
Yeah.
I think you are part of that crew along with a number of others.
Mhm.
How we've actually uh, we've actually shifted the attention from just looking at Panini and looking at tops, for example. We were the ones, right, along with Turnit, talking about how great Topps Chrome was, Topps
Mhm.
finest. We were all big fans about that, but no one was listening to us. They're like, "Hey, it's all about Panini Prism. It's all about Select." Not really, because
Mhm.
we were
There's other stuff.
we were gravitated towards like, I think that Topps is still king, right, when it comes to UFC
I can
in
see that.
terms of the presentation, the quality, the pictures, and just everything about it. The
Mhm.
QA alone was top notch.
I do want to make one correction. It's
Yeah.
and I will be the contrarian here, or the opposite way. I
Uh,
love Panini's brands way more than Topps in general, and
yeah.
that's true of like every sport.
Okay.
Um, Now there's certain Topps products that I love for UFC, but one of the reasons I got really into it was I just like some. Now some of Panini's products are absolutely just awful in my opinion. Like I hate Donruss that they released. It's just so ugly. Like touching it is just but but that's just my opinion, right? Um, so I just I want people listening to know that if you are a Panini head, I am in that corner as much as Panini hurts me sometimes. But I
Yeah.
like Topps also. I wanted to be fair. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I still like Panini quite a lot.
Yeah, you see the availability of tops now on whatnot, whereas it used to be sort of scarce and most people didn't open it and they weren't gravitating toward it, which is fine. But I'm definitely more aligned with tops, I would say, uh, in some of my bigger cards. I try to PC more of the top stuff if they have a card available.
Right.
And there are going to be limited fighters because a lot of them aren't in the UFC anymore that were in some of the older sets, I would say prior to 2016, let's say. There's not a lot of people that are still in the UFC that are still fighting currently or relevant. Um, but to if you don't mind, if I go back just a little bit, you mentioned a downturn. I hesitate to use the term downturn when I'm talking about this because I think the explosion that kind of happened with Panini getting into the or into the UFC market, um, it caused a lot of people to point their eyes in that direction. And I think now we're seeing more of a correction, more so than a downturn. I think the downturn is a result of a market correction more so than just people
Mm,
becoming not interested. I
well,
think, yeah, the boxes were selling at higher prices because of a new release for a new product. And I think that at this point, people are starting to realize, the collectability aspect, as you were talking about, Jiho, more so than just a quick flip. And I appreciate that because it's becoming more of a hobby than just a business, which I appreciate. But
right.
we all see both sides of it. I think. I think we're both
Yeah.
sort of involved in the money aspect of it, and we don't want our cards to depreciate because we want to hold. Like you said, also turn it. A lot of these cards that I have with me now are more my PC, and I'm moving to that frame of mind of wanting to collect more than I am wanting to flip. So, um, yeah, overall, I prefer some of those tops cards, like Jiho said, with the imaging. The photos are excellent. I mean, the angles that they're capturing and some of the designs on the cards, I mean, they're second to none in my opinion. Some of the early Panini stuff with the original Prism. I mean, I love debut. I love the color schemes and everything. So they're
Yeah.
both great products in my opinion, but for different reasons. And I think that I probably gravitate more toward the top stuff because a lot of the people I PC have tops cards, and I want their rookies, Benil Dariush, Arnold Allen, GSP, those types of fighters that I align myself with, and the ones that I kind of look to for some of their great fights. Dan Henderson, Boss Rutan, Jiho. They do have Topps cards available, so I would gravitate more toward those, I would say. But yeah, Panini's great products too, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm with this.
No, it's okay. I think you guys brought up a good point, which is Panini was the gateway drug, and then they're realizing that they like some of the Topps parallels also. And every day I pray to the Fanatics takeover of Panini, because then we would see, like, theoretically speaking, I mean, it hasn't played out this way necessarily around QC, but we'll see both parallels from both brands being released at the same time. And how cool would that be? Just having the options would be great.
Yes.
Yeah, and it would provide another entry point, I think, for people that aren't really looking at the Panini products and say, hey, let's try out this Fanatic stuff. And maybe, that's a good entry point for somebody that's not already into UFC.
Hey, look, Google monopolizes search, right? And it was like competition makes people work harder, right?
That's correct.
And I feel as though when Google and Bing were going at it, I mean, Google was really trying the very best that it could to be the better. And I feel as though when you have Fanatics versus Panini, they are going to try harder. It's not going to be like this lazy test and learn and see if it actually does work right. And then we can't even get the logistics correct, where you have rookies in one set but not the other, and you don't get lazy with QC, quality control, right? So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think, like, so some people will argue if Fanatics did do this, then they're going to monopolize on it. This monopolies have always existed in the card market. It's inescapable because of the licenses. So like I would argue, based on what I've seen, some of the QC, I'm not going to name the brand because we're going to talk to them in Mint Collective. Panini, some of their QC has been very suspect. And I've heard, some of the brands that Fanatics have released through Topps haven't been that great with QC either. And they're both printed in the same places, I think. That's what I've heard also. But, like, we're all speculating. This is one of the big things that I want to learn from the Mint Collective, Jiho, is where are their heads at with these licenses? Because we know that Panini is going to lose football and basketball, is it? So they're going to lose those two.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and Topps, they only have a few more years left, and then I think Topps is going to have it, or Fanatics, but they have Topps brands, right? But UFC's not, like, what's going to happen to UFC? I'm scared. I'm worried. I want to know how that story ends, and I hope Fanatics takes over, because then I know at least they have the capital to sustain this stuff. And Fanatics was always known before they got into cards for what? Jerseys, hats, memorabilia, right? So
no, wait, hold on a minute. So Fanatics, but they're known in the sports industry, though.
Correct. Yeah, right.
So.
But they have access to, like, merch and stuff, right? That these other, like, these card companies don't have. So I'm just thinking long term, a lot of the memorabilia will be that much cooler, potentially.
Right. I see that happening.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone on about for an hour and 30 minutes plus. Do you guys feel like this is a natural
I think it's a good point. Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah. Any closing thoughts you guys wanted to talk about, or?
Yeah. Well, what's going on?
No, I don't think so. I just purely to play devil's advocate, what would the I don't know a good way to put this. What would the market implications be had they stopped? So Fanatics takes over basketball and football, right? And they decide they don't want the UFC license, and Panini also decides they're no longer going to continue with UFC, and UFC isn't printed. What are the market implications with the scarcity that we would see in the UFC?
Oh, I am so happy you bring this up. Sorry, go finish your thought.
No, I'm just questioning, purely playing devil's advocate.
I love this because there was recently a conversation about this. So I listen to a lot of other sports shows that are for sports cards that are for other sports. No one talks about UFC, which is why we're here. But they were saying that what they saw with the Topps loss of their licenses and Panini taking over was that when Panini, and this is exactly what happened with UFC, and this is perfect ending and segue, by the way, this topic, because what they saw when Topps lost their licenses and Panini took them over in like 2012 or what, I'm probably wrong with the year, but it was a while ago, is the collectors that were the old vanguard that were all about Topps hated and protested the new Panini products.
Mhm.
And then 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, everybody was pining over those first year releases of Panini. And they were like, oh, these are so great. And like the prices were skyrocketing and stuff. And now they're like, oh, we love these. So I think what they were saying, because these gentlemen were kind of around for 40, 50 years, right? They're a little older and they've been through cycles and these license disputes and stuff. They were saying basically this is always the reaction is people first hate it because there's existing collectors, then new people get into it because it's a new entry point. Eventually people start realizing how scarce it was, and then it's, so anyway, I think the switch over would probably do two things. It would get people excited, new people would come in, but then people would look back at like the first year Prism, the first year Select Chronicles. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a huge bag holder for all of these things, okay? but I do think that there's like, it takes years, but people start realizing how special the first years are.
Yes, the debut.
Look at Pokemon when they switched license from, I hate to bring it up, but
no, it's okay.
From
It's
Wizards of the
relevant,
Coast, when Wizards of the Coast sold their license to Nintendo, and how scarce they realized those cards had become. I mean, overnight they exploded with.
Yes.
And it took till 2016. I mean, they were printed, I think, the last year in 2002. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but Nintendo took their license, I believe, in 2002, and it took until 2016 with Pokemon Go for people to realize how scarce these cards were when they were trying to. There was no availability because the true collectors held their positions on these cards. So, as you were saying with the Topps holders, I think it really just creates more scarcity for the Topps products. With the license going to Fanatics, it would create more scarcity, in my opinion, for the Panini products.
Yeah.
And it may take 20 years. You never know, but
it might take a while.
yeah, and at some
if you
point,
don't
people
care,
will realize.
then, yeah, like for us, right? Like I tell little Turnit this all the time is when I have my man cave one day,
Yeah.
one day, I'm gonna frame a lot of this stuff because you guys may or may not know I like framing like sets that I do, like little sets and stuff. I can't wait for that. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. And here at this podcast, we're gonna try to get some inside info, and we might have to wink, nudge, our way through it. But
Right.
we're going to be attending the Mint Collective, so that's what's top of mind for me, Jiho, is finding out where the future looks like.
Well, I think as long as like we also can provide to our audience that sort of experience of us detailing it, like or documenting it, that would be pretty cool. So obviously we're gonna be doing something like that.
Yeah, and Roll, we wish you could be there with us, man.
Yeah, I wish I could too, but
next time.
Not gonna happen this year, unfortunately. But next year,
Next time.
I would definitely talk to the wife about it and discuss that with a little bit more time this time. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm hoping I can go, and I'm hoping to see everybody at Nationals if they decide to attend in Chicago.
I think we'll try to do a pod from there.
Yeah,
I think we should probably.
I would love to. Yeah, I would absolutely love that.
Let's do that. Any other thoughts? Roll. That was a great point you brought up, by the way.
Yeah, it just kind of popped in my mind because I've seen it happen. I don't think I've ever seen it happen to where they discontinued a product completely. As I was kind of mentioning with UFC, if nobody printed UFC for a certain amount of time, I think there's just too much money in it to where they wouldn't do something like that. But it just popped into my head, something that random thought. But
yeah, good point.
But other than that, no, I appreciate it, guys. It was fun.
Fun. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you didn't catch us next time. We appreciate everyone's support, and we're looking forward to more and more episodes. Thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Night.